When you want to apply an adjustment that only affects a specific area of a photo, sometimes the best way to go about that is to simply paint the adjustment into the image. In this photo, for example, you can see that over in the trees, there's a real lack of contrast. The top portion of the tree looks good, but most of the midsection here looks very drab, a little bit gray and flat, and I'd like to enhance contrast there, and in fact also for the boathouse in the distance as well. I'll start off by applying an adjustment that I think will be an appropriate adjustment for the image, and more importantly, an adjustment that is fairly obvious, very plain to see. I'll add a curves adjustment in this case, and I'm going to drag my curve upward. Since this is a black and white image, I'll drag the curve upward in order to add some density, but I want to focus that adjustment on the darkest portions of the photo. If I scroll down a little bit, you can see that the dark portions of the curve are over on the right side and the lighter portions are over on the left side. So I want this anchor point to be over on the right side, and I want to raise it up in order to add density. But I also want to have some contrast in the photo, and so I'm going to drag the left side down just a little bit. Now, I'm obviously affecting the entire image, and so it's very difficult to evaluate whether or not this is a good adjustment. The most important thing at the moment is that it's an obvious adjustment. I can then focus on having this adjustment only affect specific areas of the photo. And the way I prefer to work when I'm applying a targeted adjustment in this way is to first fill the layer mask with black. The layer mask starts off filled with white, that's the default, so that the adjustment layer will affect every single pixel in the image. I'm going to fill with black so that the adjustment will not affect any pixels in the image. I'll go ahead and choose Edit and then Fill from the menu. I've already made sure that the layer mask itself is active, and then I can choose Black from the Use pop-up and click OK. That will fill that layer mask with black, so now the adjustment is not affecting any of the image. Next, I'll choose the brush tool from the toolbox and then make sure that I'm working with a brush that has a 0% hardness, a nice soft edge. The blend mode needs to be set to normal, and I'll leave my opacity at 100%. Now again, in the context of a layer mask, black blocks the adjustment and white reveals the adjustment, and so in order to reveal the adjustment in the tree area here, I'll want to paint with white. I can press the letter D on the keyboard to set the colors to the defaults for a layer mask, which are a white foreground color and a black background color. I can also switch back and forth between those by pressing X on the keyboard. But in this case, I want to paint with white, and so I'll click and drag in the image, painting over the area that I want to adjust, in this case, for the most part, the tree here. And because I've applied a little bit of an exaggerated adjustment, I'm able to see the effect very, very clearly within the photo. Once I feel that I have the area that I want to adjust well defined, I can go back to my curves adjustment layer and change the effect within the photo. I think in this case I'll make the image a bit darker. That looks to be a pretty good result. I can turn off the visibility for the curves adjustment layer and then turn it back on in order to evaluate the result. That might be just a little bit too dark, so I'll tone things down just a little bit. That looks much better. So once again, evaluating by turning off the visibility for the curves adjustment layer, we can see the original image, which has areas that are very washed out, and then turning on the visibility for that curves adjustment layer, we can see that we've greatly improved the overall density. Obviously, there's a fair amount of other work that's needed in this image, but I'm happy with this initial starting point, painting in order to apply a targeted adjustment.